I'm very happy to be back. I was talking with people, and it was funny to be back at ASU after doing a lot of public speaking and realize that you do a bit revert into the student that was not very good at public speaking. So I apologize if I stutter. I have a few different essays and excerpts to read for you tonight. I'm going to start with part of the introduction, which is titled A Lineage. No one taught me to be Native American. My mother taught me that I was, but she did not have the context for what that heritage meant. My grandmother mentioned it very little, even though it was visible in her features. Yet from my earliest memories, being Native has always been an integral part of my identity. Even though I was raised far from my tribe, far from any tribe, I heard the drumbeat of our traditions in my heart. My name is Leah Myers. I'm the last member of the Jamestown S'Klallam Tribe in my family line. My family has always called me the record keeper. I collect the stories of those who came before me, of all my family members. I have suitcases and shoeboxes full of photos and notebooks full of stories. I aim to make memories tangible, physical, so they are harder to forget. I don't want other Native Americans to go without, like my family has for so long. I want to give my generation a voice. I was born to tell my story and the story of my people, to make everyone aware that we exist still, that we breathe still. Totem poles are used to represent stories or places, and in my case, the totem pole I have created in my mind represents my family. I picture this carved monument standing alone within the Washington rainforest. Its painted faces, though worn in places, show bear, salmon, hummingbird, and perched at the top, raven. I am here to carve that same totem pole into the minds of others, so we will not be forgotten when we are gone. The phrase, low man on the totem pole, was coined by a white man in the 1940s to mean a person with no respect, status, or power. He clearly did not consult the natives who carved the poles. They honor the figures they represent by immortalizing them in precious old-growth red cedar. Each member of the totem pole is significant, but the one at the bottom is often given the most reverence. They are the one who holds up everyone else. They are the one who starts the story. Thank you. The next section I want to read is an excerpt from the essay titled Real Live Indians. The entire essay grapples with when somebody asks you your race and then you tell them and then they say, no, you're not. And that's sort of there's lots of times that happens in life, for me specifically. And also alongside that, there's a research components concerning assimilation and genocide and maybe why people think those things. So this is my favorite excerpt from that essay. In 2013, when I was living in Arizona and attending college, I went on a spring break vacation to Albuquerque, New Mexico with my friend Miranda. Miranda was very pale, with bright blue eyes and thin, manageable hair. We were sitting at the continental breakfast at the Best Western we were calling home that week. Miranda was a morning person and therefore was chatting with a family, a middle-aged woman with her kids and her mother. I am not and have never been a morning person. So I was trying hard to ignore the conversation and eat my lackluster bacon and bagel. However, the woman was very loud. They were from the UK. They were touring the US. We're on our way to the Grand Canyon, the woman said. She used big gestures and smiled too wide in her I Heart Albuquerque tank top. Oh, that's cool, Miranda said, equally as cheery. We're from Arizona. You're going to love it. It's beautiful there. That's what we've heard. She leaned down, pressing both hands into the table. And we paid for the tour into the canyon. We're going down into it to see real live Indians. Miranda immediately began to laugh. She bent over her plate of muffins, body shaking and eyes squeezed shut. The woman's face was blank, then slowly morphed into offended confusion. Her hands were still pressed into the table, and she turned her full attention towards me. Now her posture looked more like a cop conducting an interrogation. She said nothing, but her face shouted, "What's so funny?" She's laughing because I'm actually Native American, I said. I resisted the urge to do jazz hands at this woman, and instead offered up whatever a fake smile looks like at too damn early in the morning. The stranger took a moment to regard me. I wondered how the cogs were turning in her head as she looked me over. Her mind must have been full of images of the noble savage, a warrior in a headdress standing tall on a cliff or a hill and letting out a hand-over-mouth war cry. Instead, her first interaction with a real live Indian was a grouchy 20-something girl in an oversized Fall Out Boy t-shirt in the forgettable breakfast parlor of an equally forgettable Best Western. Her stare felt like it lasted at least 20 years, but finally she spoke. "Oh," she said, returning to a normal standing posture and gesturing at me with an open palm and a half shrug. "Well, congratulations. Good for you." Miranda, who had just recovered from her previous fit of laughter, broke into hysterics again. Was all I managed to get out at first. I wanted to devour this woman's dignity. Congratulations for what, exactly? For having a family who made it through genocide? For being part of the slim population of surviving Native Americans post-colonization? And anger simmered in my throat, begging to be let loose on this stupid woman who was there to simply enjoy her vacation. How dare she remain blissfully unaware of the modern existence of Native Americans when all she had seen were movies making us look like history? As mad as I was, I knew it wasn't just her fault, and I couldn't muster up the energy to boil my anger into a response. "Thank you?" I asked. She did not take it as a question. "You're welcome," she said in her still too bright voice. She excused herself to go get more food shortly after, and I threw out my breakfast, having lost my appetite. Later that day, Miranda and I went to the Petroglyph National Monument. There were hundreds of carvings in volcanic rock, of men and masks and armadillos. The pamphlets we were given talked about how the park was in place to protect an ancient culture. The pamphlet never mentioned the Navajo reservation down the road. Indian boarding schools began in 1860, with the first school being established on the Yakima Indian Reservation in Washington state. These schools were designed to take Native American youths and mold them into members of civilized society, to make them white. The school taught the basics of education, such as arithmetic, but also taught students to practice Christianity and that the political structures of the United States were definitely ideal for everyone. The actual goal was to eradicate every ounce of Native cultures. By the 1880s, it was decided that boarding schools on the reservation were not removed enough from the Native American way of life. They couldn't kill the students' spirit and cultural connection fully while on their homeland. To assimilationists, whose goal it was to erase our existence, off-reservation boarding schools were the best way to bring Native children into the folds of white society. Here enters Colonel Richard Henry Pratt, a man on every modern Native American's shit list. Pratt created the Carlisle Indian Industrial School in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and his motto was "Kill the Indian, save the man." At this school, and others that would open and follow in its wake, tens of thousands of Native children faced abuse and neglect. They were often forcibly removed from their homes and taken to these schools that were sometimes across the country from their original lives. When they arrived, the children were forced to cut their hair and change their names. They were made to become white in look and label, stripping any semblance of Native American heritage. The children were not allowed to speak their native tongues, some of them not knowing anything else. They were prohibited from acting in any way that might reflect the only culture they had ever known. At Pratt's Carlisle Indian Industrial School alone, the numbers revealed the truth of what this treatment did. Of the 10,000 children from 141 different tribes across the country, only a small fraction of them ever graduated. According to the Carlisle Indian School Project, there are 180 marked graves of Native children who died while attending. There were even more children who died while held captive at the Carlisle School and others across the country. Their bodies are only being discovered in modern times, exhumed by the Army and people doing surveys of the land who are finding unmarked burial sites. An autograph book from one of these schools was found in the historical records with one child's message to a friend: "Please remember me when I am in the grave." The U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs seemed to think that Pratt had the right idea and made his school the model for more. There ended up being more than 350 government-funded boarding schools for natives in the United States. Most of them followed the same ideology: never let the children be themselves, beat their language out of them, punish them for practicing their cultures. Pratt and his followers certainly killed plenty of Indians, but they didn't save a damn thing. Thank you. This next essay is one that I wrote as an epistolary. It's called A Letter to My Seventh Generation Descendant. It is largely about just this idea of looking to the future and what do you see when you look there. So. Dear great-great-great-great-granddaughter, you probably don't exist. I have never wanted to be a mother, and that will probably never change. Still, every time my tribe reaches out to those of us in higher education, we are asked what we are doing to plan for the future 7 generations. At least once a year, my thoughts are brought back to you. In my mind, each year when I conjure you, you look like what I imagined my daughter would look like. You have a healthy collection of freckles dusted across your high cheekbones, black hair that hangs in curls, bright blue eyes, and skin just a shade lighter than my own. You are beautiful. Then I have to remember that you would not be my daughter, but someone much more removed. A generation is measured as an average of 25 years, so 7 generations creates a gap of 175 years. At that thought, my image of you pales. Your face loses the angles I know come from my native blood, and your hair fades into a golden brown. You are still so beautiful, but you look nothing like me. Many Native American tribes practice this 7-generation philosophy, starting with the Haudenosaunee Alliance of tribes that inhabited northern New York. For as long as Native history has been told, we have planned to better the world decades down the line. In the past, this has dictated fishing and hunting regulations, relations with neighboring tribes, and keeping the fire of culture alive. Now the question is asked of those of us pursuing higher education. It is geared towards facilities and infrastructures, toward progress in every field. It is a matter of sustainability. Instead of leaving enough fish, we need to maintain access to other resources for tribal members, medical, welfare, and otherwise. Instead of keeping peace with neighboring tribes, we need to throw our voices into larger politics, aiming for a global scale. My role in this is that of record keeper and storyteller. I am here to keep the fire of culture from burning out. It is an overwhelming task when I realize you might know nothing of it. In 7 generations from the year I was born, the year will be 2168. Writing that out, it doesn't feel very far away, but I know that it is. The world has changed so much in my lifetime, and that's just 30 years so far. I have no idea what the world you would be living in looks like, let alone how you would choose to make your place in it. My tribe has taught me to plan so far in advance, but sometimes all I can think about is dilution. By the time you were born, the Jamestown S'Klallam Tribe could be as much a myth as the sea wolf or the thunderbird is to us now. I like to imagine you are one of the flames dancing to keep us relevant. Even then, when I imagine you making a drum or learning a song to welcome canoes home, it feels like a lie. My cultural world is governed by percentages and numbers and blood, and I realize now that you may not understand. There are blood quantum laws in place, an archaic, controversial system that tells us whether or not we are Native American. These laws were originally designed and enforced by the federal government as a way of choking out tribal citizenship. It may be difficult to believe, but they are now upheld by tribes themselves because some members fear that without them, the culture will die. With these laws, the race will die, but that is the unspoken truth for many within Native communities. We have been told for so long that we are history, some of us have decided we would rather become it than let our culture thin out. I am 1/8 Jamestown S'Klallam, 12.5%. According to these blood quantum laws, this means that I will be the last member of my tribe in my line unless I choose to have children with another tribal member. However, there are only a handful of families within the tribe, one being my own. So if I ever did have a child, the chances that she would have enough Native blood is narrow. This means that, if you exist, you will likely have less than 0.1% S'Klallam blood in your veins. When I think of my imaginary daughter, only 1 generation over this invisible line, I hate the idea of blood quantum. I could teach her every aspect of my heritage, bring her to every event, teach her every story. She would still be legally white. It may give her and her family, and eventually you, more privilege, but it creates a break. The stories that mean so much to me might become just stories to the future generations, hers or yours. The drumbeat in my chest could easily soften into a normal heartbeat in those who would come after me. Numbers do not matter to heritage, but I have been told for so long that they do, it's hard to see things any other way. Every day I carry my tribal member card with me. At times, it felt like my only connection to something I felt so deeply about, since I grew up with an emptiness where our songs and stories should have been. My ID is a federally recognized little rectangle of plastic, a badge of being an Indian, for better or for worse. While that piece of plastic does not determine the contents of the soul, it has shaped the lens through which I see mine. 7 generations before I was born, the year was 1818. There were some interactions between S'Klallam people and settlers, but no major trading posts had been built on the Olympic Peninsula yet. The treaty that would eventually be signed had not even been drafted. There is a good chance my ancestor 7 generations ago never interacted with a white person in her lifetime. And yet, in 8 short generations, a white person is what her descendants will legally be. I do not know anything about my ancestor, but I know she must have been taught to plan for me the way I am taught to plan for you. I often wonder if she ever considered that her tribal lineage would end in 7 generations, but I know she probably could not bring herself to that conclusion. When she thought of me, she likely thought of someone as dark as her. She probably pictured a family teaching the traditional ways to fish, or a young woman learning beadwork and lore. I wish I knew her name. I hope that, if you are there, you will know mine. That is my plan for the future 7 generations. I will write our stories and records. Despite the daily pressures I face as a woman to create a family, it is not a role I am meant for. I may not be willing to give my body to the future in the form of offspring, but I can give my mind and my research. My paginated creations are likely the closest I will get to children, to legacy. Yet every time I write about my life, my tribe, or the history of natives in general, I think about you. I like to imagine you as the family record keeper, like me. I picture you viewing Facebook photos of my life the same way I organize printed photos of the lives who came before me. I picture you with a network of family, asking older relatives who each person is in a photo or video, and keeping all the notes collected somewhere safe, maybe alongside the things I will write. I wonder if you see yourself in me as you rifle through the thousands of photos on the cloud, or if I am just another face in a collection to mention in passing. I hope that you are still taught to plan for the future 7 generations, and that you try to keep the stories of our people from burning out, even if you do not hold the flame yourself. If you ever do exist, I wonder if you will read this and know that I did my best to plan for you. Some nights I think I want to take a step toward creating a future that has room for you. I talk to myself in excited tones about what my children would possibly be like and how I would raise them. With my partner, we sometimes talk about the perfect combination of our 2 selves and construct pretty scenarios around these little dreams. Our children would be smart and beautiful, and we would raise them to be kind and happy. However, the conversation, whether alone or with another, always ends up in the same place. I reiterate how I will probably never have children. We talk about how much time and energy and patience that requires. I love the thought of you and all of my theoretical descendants, but I don't know if I'm the person that can give so much of themselves to another. I want to be able to travel, to be free to move and work as I please. I want to be able to devote myself to my art or to a cause without worry that I'm neglecting the person I am pressured by the world to love the most. Some call these selfish excuses to opt out of motherhood, but I do not need to explain myself or answer to them. I just wanted you to know that I do think of you, even knowing that, because of my decisions, you are probably not there. Thank you. And the essay I want to end on tonight, every section of the book, as Ahmad pointed out, is centered around the totems of my family: bear, salmon, hummingbird, and raven. And each section does start with a retelling of a myth, some usually slightly changed to help mirror the people that it represents, but often not changed very much, because these women have always been tied to who they are. I wanted to end tonight on reading the one for Raven, which is my totem, which is a legend of Raven stealing the sunlight. Raven has many legends among the Salish people. This is the beginning. In the original legend, Raven is a man. In my version, Raven is a woman. In the beginning, there is darkness. The trees are there, the water is there, the light is not. Raven, like the other creatures of the world, pays this no mind until she sees light for the first time. It is a glimmer from inside a Salish man's cabin, the only light the world has ever seen. Raven flies closer and perches on the windowsill to watch. Inside, there is an old Salish man with a frown etched onto his face. In the original legend, he has a daughter, but here he is alone. The house is filled with boxes and baskets, but Raven is fixated on one particular box, the one in the man's hand. A powerful glow radiates from this box, giving the light and warmth to the home. But as soon as Raven observed it, it was gone. The man shut the box lid and tucked away the light. Raven forms a plan to get that box. Raven is not an altruistic soul. She does not want to bring light to the world or to brighten the lives of others. Raven will become a collector of shiny things, of trinkets that sparkle and glow. This light will be the first in her collection, the shining star that starts it all. In this version, Raven shifts into a lost child. She exudes innocence and trust through her form and relies on the loneliness of the man and the human desire to care for another. She approaches his door and cries. The man is overjoyed. He dotes on her and gives her the best life he can in this world of darkness. She is allowed to play with most items in the home, but the box with a light is strictly forbidden. She cries and wails and squawks with the stubborn desire of a toddler. The man does as many fathers and grandfathers have always done. He caves. Raven marvels at the brightness of the light from the moment the box opens. Carefully, the man places the light in her lap to allow her to play. Raven grins up at him, and for a moment, the home is at peace. Then Raven begins to transform. Feathers sprout from her skin, and her grin morphs into a beak. Before the old, lonely man can react, Raven grabs the light in her beak and flies up through the smoke hole of the home. She does not look back at the man whose secrets she has taken. The world instantly changes. Reflections begin to dance off of the rivers. Trees and mountains throw their shadows as earth inhales its first taste of sunlight. The world wakes, and Eagle is awakened with it. Eagle is larger than Raven. He is more vicious and combative. Eagle's goal is to prove his power through force, and Raven undermines him in every place she can. He is constantly searching for her form in the darkness and failing to catch her. Now his target is illuminated and clear. In her joy at success, Raven does not hear the beating of massive wings right away. For a moment, she does not feel the air grow dense with the fear and awe that Eagle invokes in the creatures of the world. It isn't until he lets out an early, triumphant call that she swoops just out of his reach. In her sudden movement, the ball of light slips. When she grasps it, it splits in two. Half of the light falls to the ground and shatters. Half of what hits the ground bounces up and hangs in the sky, pockmarked and rough. The other half shatters into millions of tiny slivers that float up like dust and settle in the darkness. These become the moon and stars. Eagle continues to chase Raven. He is relentless in his desire to suppress her. They have flown for hours, and Raven begins to tire. She knows that as long as she carries this light, she will be a target. As long as she shines and he stares, she will not be free of him. She curves toward the sky and flies as high as she can, with Eagle trailing behind. Raven gently releases the light, letting it hang high in the vast silk of sky toward the east. She flies down with the light behind her. Eagle is blinded and loses her in the chase. Raven lands on the trees below, breathing easy now that she is away from Eagle for one more day. She watches rays of sunlight break through the branches. It wasn't what she intended, but the light is still, in a way, hers. The forgotten Salish man is angry. He cries at loss and betrayal. He covers his eyes and curses his weakness for sharing what was meant to be his alone. When his breath is finally even again, he moves his hand. Sunlight streams through the windows and the smoke hole of the home. The world outside is vivid and bright and welcoming. He knows in that moment that this was always meant to be, and his light will live on longer than ever now. Okay. Thank you so much for your time.